wants to make a comment or ask a question, what I would suggest is that you say your name and then, if you want, say what organisation you're from or what part of the borough, whatever you want us to know, really. So, who would like to ask anything to anybody? Well, in order of the people that I've seen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did I say you were right?
Yes. There's no turkey for questions.
Okay. I don't know if you remember your numbers. I don't. But I remember you were number 1. I think you're 11.
Yeah.
Okay. So, number 1.
It's like an auction.
Yes, it's like an auction. Yeah.
I'm David Arditi. I'm the coordinator of Brent Cyclists, which is the local group of the London Cycling Campaign. I'm glad a number of the members of the panel have mentioned and recognised the critical role that cycling could play in overcoming our air pollution problems. We regard the provision of cycling infrastructure to make it safe and attractive for people to cycle is absolutely critical. And Ellie mentioned this, that most people say it is too dangerous to cycle in Brent, and so we really do need to save cycling infrastructure. This can take several forms. We've heard Navin mention the mini Hollands. We also have cycle superhighways, and we've had one very controversial proposal for a cycle superhighway, Cycle Superhighway 11, involving closure of gates to Regent's Park to essentially reduce to a very low level the traffic in Regent's Park, and to also transform the Swiss Cottage gyratory to make it more a humane and friendly place. And I'd like to know what the GLA candidates' view on the Cycle Superhighway programme in general is, what kind of superhighways they would support, where they would support them, in particular because Zach Goldsmith has made very negative comments about the Cycle Superhighway 11 and suggests that he wouldn't support that kind of thing.
So that question really is for the three candidates.
It's really for the candidates.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can start. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you that cycling is a key part of reducing air pollution in London, and it's a massive part of what the Greens intend to do if elected into office in this election. I mean, really, a big part of it is obviously putting more investment into safer cycling, and that means also reducing the speed limits on London's roads, and that means also cutting the number of vehicles that are emitting a lot of NO2, and so in terms of the superhighways, I think that's something that Greens would support quite strongly, but I think it takes obviously takes a little bit more time in terms of understanding what the needs are, and actually improving already the traffic levels, because right now you already have a lot of cars on those streets, and it's kind of it's a way of reducing those levels adequately so that we can actually implement those mini Hollands across London, because they absolutely need to happen if we're going to reduce emissions.
Yeah, I don't think Zach said anything negative at all about superhighways.
He said he wanted to rerun the consultation when about 2/3 of the respondents of one of the largest consultations ever done in London have already said they support
that's not negative necessarily. He's talking about reflecting, making sure that the views of the entire community are taken into account. So that's not negative. That's actually responsible.
One of the largest consultations ever done.
Well,
to repeat it would be a waste of money and time.
In your opinion, obviously, but he's absolutely a strong supporter of cycling, as am I. And of course, these superhighways came about because of Boris and his personal drive and his belief in cycling, which I'm sure you would agree with. So no, he's not at all negative about cycling. He sees it as a key part of making sure that we have more sustainable transport infrastructure in future transport options. He wants to look at making it safer to cycle. You mentioned that. He wants to look at improving junction safety. I agree that gyratory around Swiss Cottage is a nightmare for everyone, for all road users. So there are absolutely ways to improve, to make improvements for all road users and cyclists. But cyclists are at the heart of the need to improve transport links around London. And he's not negative whatsoever. He is extremely positive on all environmental issues and making sure that as many people cycle as possible. So no, he's not negative whatsoever.
I'm pleased to confirm that I have signed up to the petition for mini Hollands right across London. This is something I have been consistently working upon. I mentioned my planning committee role. As part of the planning, there's London Plan, which is Bible of London's planning regime. In there, when there was recent public examination by the inspector, I did actually say that this is something which should be enshrined in strategic plan of London, so that initiatives for safer, easier and attractive cycling should not be left to a kind of lottery situation whereby you're only successful, you can have it and have the funding if you bid for it. It should not be, because outer London boroughs, with the amount of growth that we have, if you're serious about sustainable transport, we need to have cycling initiatives with appropriate funding. With regards to Cycle Superhighway 11, I do agree that, there comes a time where you have spent or invested enough in consultation that you actually get on with it. It is about linkages, it is about improving access, and that is where I think that, it is time that, I think you mentioned number 11, yeah, that's really got to go ahead. That's my clear position on that. Thank you.
Who was number 2? Robin.
Robin Sharp, representing Queen's Park Area Residents Association here, but I also chair Brent Patient Voice, which is concerned with health issues, speaking to the authorities. So I'm concerned both about the health side and the immediate air pollution issues, and I congratulate Friends of the Earth convening this meeting, which I had hoped very much would focus on air pollution per se. I know wider issues and wider considerations have come up, and the meeting has had a practical effect as far as we're concerned in Kilburn, because we want to mount an air quality survey of Salisbury Road, which runs parallel to Chamberlain Road on the eastern side of the area, and has a large volume of traffic, a lower volume of buses. So we want to find out what the mix of vehicles is going up and down this road, particularly in peak hours. And we've got 5 schools on that road, even in our area, and the effect of diesel pollution on children is particularly concerning. And if we find out the mix of vehicles and the levels of pollution, and we want to move, hopefully with the help of our colleagues in Brent and Jennifer in particular, I talked to yesterday as a result of this meeting being called, about some practical things we can do. My background is in the Department of the Environment. I'm very sorry to hear about the policies which they're now pursuing. They were doing a bit better when I was there. That's 20 years ago, I'm afraid. But what is very difficult to understand, we've heard these various figures of 3,000 to 9,000 extra deaths a year in London from a number of recent reports. And if Ebola was killing 3,000 to 9,000 people a year in London, this would be absolute headlines every day in every newspaper in London and most national papers. But some difficult to understand reason, this whole issue has so far been swept under the carpet with the government in the lead, I'm afraid. Because even with the VW emissions scandal, the reaction in Britain has been low-key. The government has actually lobbied for on-the-road testing of diesel vehicles to be postponed further in Europe. And I think the fundamental reason why we've got this problem, that it hasn't sort of gone away as standards appear to have raised, that's standards for diesel vehicles, we're now on this EU6, is that the laboratory testing is completely unrealistic. And if people would only look at a report which the GLA produced last year called Driving Away from Diesel, they had 2 incredibly informative tables from the Transport and Road Research Laboratory
Does anybody want to respond
I'll quickly respond. I know that QPara has also been part of the whole campaign with Chamberlain Road. I'll be very happy to work with you on the survey for Sainsbury Road. I don't know whether you're going back to Plant Earth to do any further work, or
well, we can't get something we can. But Jennifer and both Ollie have both offered to help me, so that's excellent.
So that's excellent, and I'm pleased to hear that Brent Council is now going to review its action plan for air quality, and something which I would like to sort of work very closely to make sure that people's views are taken on board, and what we can do at GLA level in consultation and working with TfL and the new mayor to make sure that we do have a proper strategic plan for Brent overall, as well as something happens sooner than later. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing as well, because I really appreciate what you said about the deaths per year, 9,500, and it hasn't been taken seriously enough, and with the government actually colluding with the motor industry, and it's part of actually a systemic issue within the government, and that has also led to opposition governments also not taking enough of a hard line on sorting out an issue that should have been sorted out maybe 20, 30 years ago, not 5 years from now or 10 years from now, as many people are proposing. London's been in breach of EU safety limits for 5 years, probably longer than that, and the action being taken has been too slow. What we've seen is governments actually subsidising the fossil fuel industry with $6 billion a year, which is absolutely ludicrous. It is a scandal, and that's something that clearly can only be resolved if we take bold, immediate action, and that's something that with the Green Party we've been committed to for several years, and obviously in terms of our record in the Assembly has been pushing other Assembly members, pushing the Mayor to advance green policies, and that's what we would tend to do after this election as well.
Extremely long question, but I'll give a very short answer. The Conservatives, Zach Goldsmith's record on the environment speaks for itself. His personal commitment to environmental causes speaks for itself. And from a personal perspective, my own commitment to improving the local environment is also something that I believe in strongly and have delivered on in certain areas, and I'm very happy to also work with any residents associations, as I have done with QPara on a couple of other issues around Tiverton Green. So I think dialogue is extremely important.
May I just say, just quickly, I totally take the point about a perceived lack of sort of joined upness, and just to reassure you that Cabinet colleagues are certainly on board in terms of the importance of this issue, and I think Councillor Harani, who's our lead for adult social care, including public health, I'll make sure that he is fully engaged when we do the consultation and make sure that we do pick up the interest with public health.
Who was number 3?
Martin Francis, I blog on Wembley Matters and I'm a member of the Green Party. One thing about electric buses, when I was a kid we used to travel on trolley buses, which were electric, down the Harrow Road and other places. So welcome back, electric buses. Couple of questions, one at the sort of local level, because I am concerned that sometimes we don't have joined up thinking even there. There's a planning application coming in soon for the Quinton estate around Wembley Stadium. When Wembley Stadium and the development of that was first posited, it was going to be a public transport destination. This latest plan application is for a car park for 1,800 cars there. So that's gone by the by. I've noticed, for example, that a lot of the school expansion proposal we put forward mention green travel plans for schools. And I'm interested to know how much they're being monitored and how successful they really are. The new French school at Wembley, at the old Wembley Town Hall, Brent Town Hall, has about 60 cycle racks and none of them are used because children are not going to cycle from South Kensington, where many of them live, up to Wembley. So it's there and it's cosmetic, it's not really working properly. Same for some of the new flats that are coming in. The new Twin Towers at Wembley High Road is going to have very few parking spaces, and they say that's fine because there's public transport nearby, but we do know that people will drive and they'll go and park in nearby streets and create more of a problem. So there's a whole question of enforcement there. And just one last thing on the local issues, trees. After the unfortunate accident where a woman was killed by a falling tree, quite a few trees have been removed from Brent Housing Partnership estates and street trees, and I've noticed that many of them have not been replaced, and they should have been replaced over the winter and autumn when trees are planted, and they haven't been. So I just wonder how that programme's going. And then at the London level, we're told...
Martin, there's a lot to be
Just one very quick one. At the London level, we're told to shut our windows and not exercise at times of high pollution. Other capital cities say take the car off the road, or half the cars come off the road to cope with that problem. Can we do that?
Yes.
So,
I'd like to see us bring instead of the congestion charge, why can't we have an air pollution charge? I mean, the congestion charge worked really well. Why can't we have that all over London?
Okay, who would like to answer Martin and this lady whose name I don't know?